So if I volunteered, so you do the fingerprint, and then how does the mask thing work with, is it just whoever wants to, or you gotta do the show proof of vaccine or whatever?
I think right now it's just whoever wants to wear a mask is, you
okay.
know, they can. You're not obligated to wear a mask right now.
Okay.
It's just how you feel about it.
Okay.
And we have screen protectors if people wanted screen protectors.
Right.
So same with masks or face shields if people want. Like hypothetically, let's say a tutor was uncomfortable, not working with someone who refused the mask. Well, we wouldn't pair them together anyways.
Right.
And then we would just say like just ask your learner if they wouldn't mind wearing a mask, or vice versa. If you're working with a learner and the learner insisted on someone wearing a mask, we would ask the tutor please wear one. Or otherwise, they're just incompatible at that point, and we wouldn't pair them together.
Right. So and then the vaccine, no one needs someone.
No, unfortunately, and also we're not allowed to ask if people have vaccines. If that was important for a tutor to only work with learners who are vaccinated, the tutor could ask the learner if they are vaccinated and then make a choice whether or not they're going to work with that person or not.
Oh, okay.
But we ourselves cannot ask if people are vaccinated or not.
That's like a HIPAA thing or something.
It has to, it's in some ways, yes, technically it doesn't violate HIPAA, but it's just we're kind of covering, crossing our T's and dotting our I's.
Right. I appreciate it. Because earlier you didn't have one, but it's just,
Yeah, earlier I didn't have one on, but then I was like, I'm just going to put one on. I decided, I changed my mind.
It's just personal preference.
Yeah.
I actually am quite fond that our culture, like, people are actually sick. They're wearing them now, regardless of the COVID thing. But it's just personal choice.
Yeah. I was raining on it. Oh, you said wait, what did you, the first part? I'm sorry, I got distracted.
I was saying, personally, I like how because when I spent time teaching in certain, like, Korea and China, so it was nice that people had a cold. They put a mask on. That was nice.
That was like pre-COVID.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm saying, personally, I think it's nice that, people have a choice. That if they want to wear one, they can wear one. If they don't want to wear one, they don't have to wear one. That's what I'm saying. But we don't have a policy saying people have to.
Right.
So if a person wants to, they can.
Was it I know in the early days of COVID, like things were more mandatory.
We had to because it had to do with company and local policy. If California had a mask mandate, then we had to have a mask mandate. And our company policy, like for the library, was follow the local ordinances. The local ordinances was a mask. And then after the local ordinances went away, then the company said, okay, it depends on what everyone prefers, unless they have tested positive for COVID. If you test positive for COVID, it's the mask quarantine thing for 10 days.
Oh, okay.
So it really depended on company policy, which then company policy depended on state mandates.
And then, what the heck? Oh, but then what do you think about the vaccine though? If I was thinking about getting it, would you think you'd suggest it or not?
Well, I wouldn't suggest anything because it's your personal choice whether you want to get one or not.
Yeah. Right. That's what I'm trying to debate. Did you do it or not?
Yeah, I got the vaccine.
Oh, and then there's a few of them, right? Like 3 or 4?
There was a 2, depending on which shot you got. There was the Pfizer, Moderna, and Johnson & Johnson. Johnson & Johnson was 1, and it was 60. They said it was 60% effective at preventing you from getting like serious infection. And then the Moderna and Pfizer had more up, like the 90% preventing serious infection. And so the Pfizer and Moderna, you had to get 2 shots. You got 1, and you got a booster shot. And then since subsequent years, that was like early for the first vaccine, they had booster shots. So that's just like you get your flu vaccine, how there's flu vaccine booster shots. Right. So just you would get the booster shot.
Yeah.
Even the Johnson & Johnson, they actually recommended people get a booster shot of either Moderna or Pfizer.
I appreciate that. I just need to grab my laptop. Yeah, I'm just gonna grab my laptop. Yeah, because it's like a big debate. People are like, ask them, should I do it? And then they're like, people get sick. And did you, or they get complicated? Did you have any complications?
I had no reaction whatsoever. However, sometimes the reaction to the cells means that your body is actually reacting to it and actually recognizing it in order to create antibodies for it. But in general, I'm mostly saying that people want to, they can. They don't have to.
Right.
But just like flu shot, I personally don't get the flu shot every year, but I know someone who's very immune compromised, and so she gets the flu shot every single year because if she gets the flu, she's going to end up being hospitalized. Wow.
Yeah, it's crazy because people, man, there's some conspiracy theories out there. They're like, some people are like, never. That's the line in the sand. You know what I mean?
I think Daniel's trying to interject.
The science is Pfizer and Moderna do a lot of science by press release. And at this point, the state and federal government are basically just taking their word about this,
Right.
even though they requested to keep their data secret for 70 years.
Right.
That has more to do with like the actual coding of their vaccine, not necessarily the studies that they've done.
Both. What?
They didn't keep their study, the results of their studies. So they didn't do a double-blind study originally. That was pushed, but now they have done like the studies. But they thought that the actual coding, they weren't going to release that because of profits. But I thought that for the studies, they published the results of their studies just like most tests, but they just didn't do the double-blind study because that takes years, and they were trying to push it out faster.
So did you guys get them?
I had a stroke after mine. I have a friend that's a scientist, and he said I'm probably one in a million because of the carrier. Everything else was gluten-free, the carrier, and then he said, he's a scientist, said exactly what Shay's saying.
Oh, so you got a particular vaccine that could cause a stroke? Or no?
I just
Oh, I misheard you, so my bad.
Yeah, it's a vascular virus that enters through your respiratory system, so it's novel in that way. Three things I would point out is traditionally with all vaccines, they do this thing called aspiration when they're doing a muscular shot, where they take the needle out a little bit and to make sure they're drawing blood and not just they're not drawing blood, but they're injecting it into your muscle tissue, not your bloodstream, because all vaccines have a low risk of causing myocarditis if they're injected directly into your bloodstream.
Right.
Unfortunately, Moderna and Pfizer have both actually instructed, it's in the instructions of the doses, to not do aspiration for some reason. So that in itself creates a higher elevated profile risk for myocarditis. Plus, the vaccine and the virus itself also has a higher profile risk for myocarditis. And it's recommended. There's a question about whether or not the risk-benefit analysis for the vaccine supports booster shots for men under the age of 40.
That was the thing that was conclusive, was though that for older people, like with the same as a flu shot, you should get your vaccine, because just like any flu shot, same with like inconclusive about people under 50 getting a flu shot. So that is not debatable. But but whether or not everyone needs, but you're right, whether or not everyone needs a flu shot, one flu shot, but essentially the COVID shot. But
So your stroke was definitely a direct cause of the vaccine? A result of?
well, that's technically what you're saying.
I would never say anything. All I would say is.
Or I just thought it was. I didn't know. I was just clarifying. I didn't know if that was the point you were making.
I would just say.
What she had pointed out was saying that the carrier, whatever they're using as to essentially, because the virus is inert, it's not the DNA, it's the RNA of the virus that they're injecting into you for your body to actually code and say like, hey, we're gonna recognize this. I was saying what they were using to transport the virus on. If she has an allergy for it, then it gave her. Then she had an allergic reaction, which caused a stroke. That's what she's saying. So it's not necessarily like purely a vaccine, because actually having an allergic reaction to vaccines is actually a thing that happens. Like with the polio vaccine, when people were doing that way back when, people had reactions to that, severe reactions, especially when you're using live polio. In fact, actually, the polio we have nowadays is not natural. It comes out from like with the vaccines. Essentially, it's the artificial created one.
And the latest booster, the bivalent booster, is a little controversial because one, they didn't actually do any human trials on it. The science that they have put out that speaks to its safety and efficacy is based on studies on a similar product, not that actual numerically identical product. And weirdly, the studies that they're citing that product was only tested on 8 mice, which statistically a sample size of 8 is just like useless. So there are a lot of doctors like at UCSF who say I would personally not recommend the bivalent
And they're
booster.
talking about like the boosters, like the 4th or 5th booster, not necessarily just having the actual Pfizer and Moderna. But most part, these are things that there's a lot of stuff on the internet. We're not doctors, and different people have different ideas.
But the good thing is that no one's idea should be shut down. And if you had a booster and suddenly within so many weeks you had a stroke and the doctors in Newport Beach and Hope could not figure out why, well then maybe that is an opinion that I could always have, that after the stroke, after the booster, suddenly I had a stroke on that left side and I had paresis on the left side.
Oh, it was on the side that you got the
Yes, sir.
Wow.
And my friend is a scientist and a chemist, and he said exactly what both of you guys are saying. And the efficacy in the mice, and how long has it been tested?
Well, that's why they didn't do the double-blind study, and for some reason was because if you have, essentially, we were all human guinea pigs. And the fact that if people around the world got the vaccine, and then they can track it, how the efficacy of the vaccine in real time, and then also what their reactions are, then it's kind of like instead of doing the study in the lab, they did the study just globally.
Definitely.
Because what I get confused though, because so say you did the 5 vaccines, right? And no, I'm just saying, say I did it, like I decided to do it, I could do that, right?
Question though first.
Yeah.
You're holding your phone. Are you recording this?
No.
Because you told me yesterday you do a podcast with James.
Yeah.
So, and California has a single person like recording thing where you can